Since childhood, many people dream to fly by a plane and even try to design primitive flying machines by themselves. And those who remain faithful to their childhood dream when becoming older start designing their own aircraft models that can no longer be called toys. The heroes of the program Generation UA are sure that it is aircraft modeling that allows everyone to feel different, feel not just like designers, but also as pilots who conquer the sky. During the flight, I rest from everything mundane. Modeling is a feeling of flying, a feeling you can experience without actually getting into a plane. Aircraft modeling is a passion of a lifetime for some. For some people it is just a sport, and once you tried it, you keep on doing it all your life. Aircraft modeling appeared in the world even earlier than the Wright brothers had their first flight. There were models that people used to learn how to fly like birds. They did the basics in the exploration of aerodynamics, and only after that the Wright brothers managed to rise into the air. In Ukraine, this is also the beginning of the last century. Our fellow countryman Igor Sikorsky, before he tried to build his aircraft, he practiced on aviation models. Similarly, other aviation pioneers tried to start learning about the sixth ocean using the aviation models. Aircraft modeling is more about a flight and design. However, here it is more popular to fly using ready models rather than do the modeling itself. Abroad, aircraft modelers are approaching enthusiastically the construction, and they conduct the experiments. After several air festivals near Kiev in 2012 and 2013, aircraft modeling has become much more popular. It's getting more popularity among people who choose it as their hobby. My whole family are aviators. My father is an aviator, all his brothers are aviators, and my grandfather is still working at the Antonov aircraft design and manufacturing plant, where he makes planes, real planes. And from my childhood, I had this big craving for planes, for gliders. I like gliders more because of their beauty and elegance, and aircraft for their sharpness. This has truly been my hobby since childhood. The hobby was from my childhood, but I didn't know how to realize it. There is an abundance of aircraft models. There are jet planes, piston electrolytes, airframes and helicopters, as well as jet helicopters, jet planes and even airframes. It is amazing how easily these gliders can be controlled by just touching some buttons on a radio device and making them fly wherever the pilot wants them to fly without any nerves. I finally realized this is totally possible.
Я начал заниматься авиамодельным спортом с 10 лет.
I got into airplane sports when I was aged 10. My dad does this. It became very interesting for me and I started to fly and train with him. I started with indoor helicopters and then I moved to a glider. I really liked it. It's easy to fly just by its nature. It's interesting and fun. Then you can take it to competitions in different countries and then communicate with different people.
Потом на соревнования ездить в разные страны, общаться с разными людьми.
My first aspirations to build a plane appeared at the age of 6 or 7. I was born this way. My first airplanes were literally made out of cardboard. Then there was a time when I was part of a club of technical creativity. I was engaged in many things. There were not only planes but other things too. For example, karting. I just wanted to do aviation. I was raving about it since my childhood. I was gradually moving towards this hobby. I trained for some time and then I had to apply for university, and I chose the National Aviation University, where I studied aviation engineering. I think happiness is when work and hobbies coincide. At work you can find something you are interested in, and with a hobby you can transfer some knowledge from your hobby to the workplace. There are a lot of aircraft models, but they can be subdivided into three main categories. They are free-flying models, cordless aircraft models, and radio-controlled models, and each model in this subdivision has its own additional classes. In free-flying models, the basic principle is that an athlete or an amateur is preparing a model, and after its launch, there is no longer any way to interfere with the flight, as the electronics on board the aircraft model are programmed so it can fly. In cord models, the main thing is that they are controlled by cords. These are cables that allow the aircraft to fly in circles, which is essentially the main feature of cord models. Just as the name suggests, radio-controlled models are those which are controlled by means of a radio transmitter. Of course, radio-controlled models are more popular not only all over the world, but in Ukraine as well. Thanks to their highly developed and reliable remote control system, these models have become more affordable. This means the average consumer can afford to buy a beginner's model in any shop and simply try it out. My first model was a glider. It was called Elf. It's a meter long and was a present from my dad. We assembled it together. This is the most unpretentious model, so there was nothing complicated about it. It came almost ready from the shop. All we had to do was install the electronics, and it was ready to fly like an eagle and be free. When I came to the store, the first time I told the shop assistant about myself and got the job, which allowed me to make my own money for the first time in my life. Then I went to a specialized store, walked in and said to the clerk, "Hello, can you show me a decent airplane model?" The shop assistant showed me some ordinary models. I then asked him if he could show me some reactive or pseudo-reactive models. I bought quite a complicated aircraft. It was an acrobatic model that was not stable in flight, though very high speed. That was when I realized that for me it was rather complicated. 5 years passed when a friend helped me adjust the aircraft. We tried to fly it for the first time, and I realized that this is real speed and adrenaline. That was when I understood that I could already handle the low level of flight control. Why did I buy my first plane? Because at first I did not have such friends who are good at construction, in details or design. They were only experienced in basic aircraft modeling. I had to learn everything from scratch on my own. Now I have 16 aircraft models, 4 of which are still in the process of being built. They are experimental. I still do not know what I can expect from them. When I first started self-construction, I would recommend assembling a small and light model. I realized that you don't need to use complicated materials and that it's better to work with easy-to-use ceiling tiles and rails. I think that the simplest model can be made in a matter of 2 weeks, but for this you need to have a mentor nearby who will show you everything and advise you what to do. After all, doing this independently without knowing the technology or knowing how to glue it together correctly, assembly of such a model is a rather complex and difficult process. For many, it all begins with the aircraft club or somebody from the family, like a grandfather or father. They tell you about it. You start with the first paper model, and then comes first throwing model, and then something else. You can glue, assemble, adjust everything, and take your model aircraft to a field when the weather is fine. Adjust it, and then it's up. Up and away we go into the blue skies above. One can easily get hooked on this for life, as it's a great feeling to fly your own homemade aircraft. The most difficult thing was to catch the wing while learning to fly. Is the easiest part of this process. The first flights are an exercise. It's just a flight in a circle and nothing more. There are no figures. When you have your first flights, you simply gain altitude, make a so-called box figure, and land the glider. It develops a reaction in a starting pilot and develops motor skills in your hands. So first you need to get used to radio equipment. I surprisingly managed to learn to control my first glider very quickly. Only 2 months later I performed a classic flight, did a classic box, barrels and dead loops, thanks to these skills I acquired from using an air simulator. I lifted my first model myself without anyone else's help. I picked it up, flew, but its landing was unsuccessful as the glider crashed to the ground. The very next day it was ready for its next flight. There was not much to repair after the crash. Whatever, what's the big deal if it crashes again? I picked it up, applied some glue, and it was ready again for the usual takeoff. The biggest difficulty for me now is that I have very little time and opportunity to take my glider for a flight. If I find the time to fly, it's not difficult for me. There are a lot of competitions held in our country. At minimum, 5 to 8 world championships are held every year, and worldwide aviation competitions are held every 4 years. In Ukraine, in all categories of models that have received the most distribution, championships of Ukraine, cups of Ukraine and different festivals are held across the country. Ukrainian modelers, probably for the past 15 years, are always in the forefront of world and European championships. For now, there is no official place where everyone would gather under one roof, as it was in the Soviet era. There is no special club, well, at least for now. We find new friends and we basically communicate on the airfield. We have a central runway in Kiev. We gather at a field in the Tureshina district. A lot of people come there. We share some advice. We sell each other models, exchange them, get acquainted, communicate, and the atmosphere there is very friendly.